The following is a look at the killers of Dead by Daylight, and any real-world equivalents they might have. Let's continue. Lisa Sherwood, aka The Hag. The Hag's brief tome lore is a story about messing with powers you don't understand. Lisa, a teenager in the southern USA, maybe Louisiana, possibly Mississippi, invokes symbols and spirits for her own personal gain, and, although somewhat skeptical, she's wary of any price she might pay. This caution is not shared by her school friend Pam, who dismisses the traditions as superstition, but plays with them anyway. Ultimately, their school teacher dies, and Pam is really glad she doesn't have to do a test. This character is more callous and psychopathic than some figures from the main project. I mean, jeez. She also doesn't show any respect at the funeral either, but winds up being crushed by the coffin. Yeah, apparently the teacher was a really fat boy, needing 6 strong pallbearers. What an accident, and a cautionary tale about playing with dangerous elements. Callous or not, Pam was Lisa's friend, so from this history I can count bereavement in the Hag's backstory, but not much else. Of course, during the tome, the dark forces aren't directly held responsible at any point. It could still all be superstition, and everything that happened could be a grim and frankly comic accident. The universe just hated Pam, and who can blame it? But we know better. The tome was released a few years after The Hag debuted as the 3rd DLC, and we all know something evil is afoot. So with the benefit of hindsight, can I tag The Hag as committing juvenile manslaughter? I think I can, because ignorance is no excuse. If I was some kind of mystical prosecutor, I'd at least have a case. Not that Lisa suffers any real consequences for any of this, at least not yet. She has her own price to pay in the base lore, released when she was.
Bullshit.
However long after these haunted school days, Lisa was kidnapped by a band of cannibals from her village. She was tortured and mutilated as she was slowly being eaten alive. They tore pieces off her, leaving her in this torn state. Lisa did manage to escape her bindings, but was already dying. So in her last breath and in total desperation, she sought help from the very symbol she had invoked before. Her story is somewhat Faustian, as she essentially sells her soul for vengeance. And the buyer? The entity itself, who presumably had no idea why Lisa was calling in the first place, but a deal is clearly struck. The details of what happens next aren't clear. I think Lisa killed her captors, tearing off chunks of their flesh as she did so. The Hag has 3 add-ons that reference the people involved: Disfigured Ear, Grandma's Heart, and the Scarred Hand. These were from the Deaf Boy, the Village Elder, and the Village Butcher, respectively. It isn't clear if these are victims or perpetrators, but their body parts being add-ons suggests the Hag took trophies. It's not unheard of to take body parts as trophies. I've talked about head collectors before, and then there's Fred West and Louis Garavito, 2 of the absolute worst. But most serial killers that took trophies only took trinkets and things, not something that would decompose. I could also tag the Hag as a cannibal, but this happened presumably after her own death and as such not part of the crime spree, but I'll tag it anyway. She's a cannibal and a witch. A real witch, not a petty bourgeois Michaela Reed type witch who'll bless your latte over TikTok or some shit, but a hardcore true witch. But that's pretty much it. There really isn't too much substantive with this story for either quality or quantity. So far, this lore is the one that aligns the least with anything comparable in true crime. I can look at the cannibals of my project and see very little in parallel. Peter Kürten, the vampire of Dusseldorf, was just a killer, as was Joachim Kroll, the Ruhr cannibal, and their crimes were more aggressive and sexual in nature. But in the cases of Richard Chase and Vaughn Greenwood, there are some ritualistic elements. In Chase's case, the vampire of Sacramento, it was about his psychosis. He had a long history with profound mental illness. Chase truly believed drinking the blood of his victims would stop his heart from shrinking, and held several other bizarre views. I see no evidence that Lisa was psychotic at all, and in fact was grounded in reality with healthy doubt. Less is known about Vaughn Greenwood, the Skid Row slasher, including why he drank the blood of his victims, and did so in such a ritualistic way. Again, like with other DBD killers, I seriously doubt this comparatively obscure real-world case was an inspiration. The name Greenwood is also probably a coincidence. Other cannibals include Fritz Haarmann, Karl Denk and Karl Grossman, as well as the modern case of Armin Mewis, who found a willing victim over the internet in 2001. There have also been historical instances of people being captured and eaten by tribes of cannibals, but these were missionaries in the 19th century and... no... The case of Al Adolf Constanzo might be more appropriate. A serial killer and drug dealer, but also one heavily invested in the occult, and in fact could be described as a cult leader. Constanzo heavily indulged in animal and human sacrifices for various drug cartels. But just how far did the hag go? Or maybe this is more indicative of the cult that would eventually capture and mutilate her. There are so many avenues to traverse when talking about the occult, but the biggest gripe I have is that these things don't exist. Magic, sacrifices, charms, gods, all superstition. But we're in a fictional universe where a great and terrible godlike creature does exist. So maybe the cult and superstitions in this universe are correct? Maybe even demonstrable and, in theory, falsifiable, which would make them science. Lisa's frenzied attack on her captors might be comparable to the likes of Andre Chikatilo, and indeed Chikatilo had a superstitious streak himself, as he removed the eyes of his victims, believing they could be used to identify him. But it should be obvious I'm really grasping at straws. Truth is, few serial killers are teenage girls, even though psychopathy knows no gender. I think. Having said that though, if anything, I'd rather talk about the survivor of the Of Flesh and Mud chapter, Ace Visconti. His bio clearly mentions scamming, and fraud is an excellent indicator of psychopathy.
Do you actually think you can defeat me?
Is there anything else? He's a reckless risk-taker, confident, or at least with superficial charm to give an uncharitable reading, self-destructive and impulsive. He's quite a bad boy, but with style and elegance, and yet he seems totally calm, unneurotic, cool. That kind of charm and charisma we'll see more of going forward, and all connected to psychopathy. Visconti also certainly has a gambling addiction, and I saw some of that during the project with the more goal-oriented serial killers. I think we can all agree Ace is the lovable rogue of the survivor side, but make no mistake, he's the one with the psychopathic traits, not Lisa. I've half a mind to go into a soapbox moment speaking out about how our cultures celebrate, glamorize, encourage, and even foster psychopathic and narcissistic tendencies. But I've already gone off topic and I'm just going to get even more off track. Is Ace a narcissist? I don't think so. Yes, he's described as a con artist and swindler, and many psychopaths and narcissists gravitate to such skullduggery. But like I said a while back, there's a world of difference between someone who's narcissistic and someone who is a narcissist. Liking a gamble and some risk doesn't automatically make you some kind of dark triad beast. Now, Ace is self-serving and self-destructive, and those bright cosmetics don't help his case. But in nature, some of the most colourful animals are the deadliest. This is why I never had a problem with the trickster being so ostentatious. I think of him as a giant venomous viper. Ace is a survivor, so that doesn't apply, so perhaps one of those poisonous frogs? It's rather fitting from the killer's point of view. Some survivors are poisonous, and you shouldn't try to get them.
Oh, come on, give me a break.
I'll mention survivors when they're relevant, and there's one case in particular where I'll be talking a lot about the survivor counterparts, but otherwise we know it's true, the game revolves around the villains. And that in itself can be viewed as glorification of bad people. Lisa, though, is just unlucky, luck being the theme of the chapter. And the themes of the chapters are going to be relevant as well. The Hag's power is to place special traps around the map called phantasm traps. When a survivor enters its radius, it triggers, and the Hag has the option to teleport straight to it to get a hit or begin a chase. It's an interesting ability, but there are major problems. Anyone who's played this game is familiar with the notion of camping, and this ability lends itself to camping like an absolute monster. But after thinking about it for a while, it's kind of fitting. Players get the most use out of the Hag by abusing her power, the same way the Hag, allegedly, abused her hexes and baubles and whatever when she was still alive. That's a nice bit of mechanically driven storytelling, which I'm going to have to assume was a complete accident, and again, I'm reading too much into this. I'm not a fan of the law. I'm not a fan of the power. I'm not a fan of this weird wooden beef jerky monster. Cabbage. What?
I'm gonna cast a spell on you. You're gonna do what I want you to. Mix it up here in my little bowl. Say a few words and you lose control. I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. I'm gonna put a spell on you. I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. Put a spell on you. You feel the fog as I cloud your mind. You get dizzy when I make the sign. You'll wake up in the dead of night, missing me when I'm out of sight. I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. I'm gonna put a spell on you. I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. Oh yeah. With this little
I'm sad we had to skip over Myers. He's one of the few killers that are genuinely scary, and although, no, he's not competitive, I'd argue he's not bottom tier like so many say. Myers is one of my favourites, so I might be biased, and the Hag really isn't. And I mean really.
put a spell on you. I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. We're gonna put a spell on you.
I don't like playing scummy and mean. I like to be barreling down on my enemies. So this is one of my least favourite killers in the roster, and to make matters even worse, I'm actually pretty good with her, and I'm kind of embarrassed of that. Therein is the real tragedy of Lisa Sherwood.
What a stroke of luck!